I did want to finish on that point that you were just making. Essentially what you're saying is there are some difficult problems, but most of the problems that currently exist are very solvable. We know how to solve them, and it's really a political problem. Is that what I understand you to be saying?
Yeah, it's basically a political problem, but it's a big political problem.
Right, that's what this movement is about. That's
you know about the organization of the EU. These are big political problems, and we haven't had great economic management. And you have the head of Britain talking about austerity economics working. It's nonsense. When the Democratic president of the United States, at least for a while, believes the big problem was government spending when we had a job crisis, that's a problem. He has turned, I think. His attitudes have turned. I should point out one thing, that, you know, the president's jobs budget would alleviate all the basic problems of debt as a percentage of GDP for the next 10 years. It would leave debt in the neighborhood of 70 or 72%, and even moderately conservative economists think that would be adequate. So we should recognize that. On the other hand, most of his budget plan is based on spending cuts, not revenue increases, not tax increases. In fact, a greater proportion of his is based on spending cuts than even Simpson-Bowles' plans for balancing the budget. His budget balancing commission that he unfortunately created some time ago, that lent credibility and created too much fear about our budget deficit problems.
You seem to have been noticeably touched by going down and visiting our movement in Zuccotti Park, and I just wondered if you could talk a bit about why.
Well, you know, we went down there. When I was invited, I should have sent you a piece I published today, maybe. I don't think you got it. When I was first invited, which was 2 Sundays ago, it seems an age ago,
yes,
people were afraid for me. And I actually called a lawyer before I went down. Because the day before, 700 young people, or not all young people, were arrested on that march on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Right.
Didn't quite know what to expect, but I felt it was my obligation. This is why I do things. And I ran into Joe Stiglitz, and we did that teaching. Turned out the young people were extremely courteous, extremely eager, thirsty for information, thirsty for confirmation of what they felt or explanation of why they felt the way they did. So it was touching. And I think maybe Joe and I had a very small part in showing the more established world that it was okay to go there. You know, that these people were really well-meaning. Some of them, many of them are very bright. Some of them are very well educated. I mean, the other day I had a little meeting with a physician, a PhD, another PhD person. So yes, I was touched, but I think what is most touching is the response around the nation and the build-up in Zuccotti Park, because it's really hit a nerve and filled, as I put it, an institutional hole in America. The Democratic Party wasn't answering the call. Congress wasn't answering it. The media, oh my gosh, the media, you know, there were always exceptions, but they weren't answering this call of frustration and anger and confusion. And these young people, including yourself, have brought attention to that, and in turn have forced Congress to answer to them to some degree, at least force Congress and the media to begin to appreciate these problems more. So we see somewhat more discussion of issues we never saw before. The next steps I am not sure about. I worry a little bit about it. Should there be explicit demands? Should there be an explicit policy agenda? What happens, of course, when it gets cold here in New York City? What happens as this keeps going and there are more opportunities for conflict with the authorities? I think it was great that Mayor Bloomberg said they could stay as long as they care to stay. There is an end point there because it gets darn cold here in Manhattan. February or January, and I'm not sure they'll be allowed to put up tents with ovens. I'm not ovens, but heaters.
Right.
There may be some restriction on that. I was told. I'm not sure of that.
Right. They have no shelters at this point, right? They're not allowed to keep shelter up.
I think they may not be.
Right.
We'll see if they can negotiate about that. I don't know what their plans are. But yeah, I'm really touched by it all. And in fact, it is remarkable how much it changed in 1 week. It's just remarkable how much it changed day by day.
Yes.
And now, my friends were afraid for me to go down there. Now you go down there and parents are bringing their children. There's food, all kinds of volunteer food, all kinds of volunteer clothing. There's a medic area for medical emergencies. There's a sanitation crew, pretty well organized. And it just keeps growing. And apparently I'm told there's going to be an international event October 15th. I myself will be in Dublin and then going to Paris that day. But I look forward to the results of that. And in fact, I look forward at some point for your people to begin developing channels with Congress, because we do have democratic institutions here. They've been sterilized, paralyzed, stunted, choose your verb, and maybe they can be opened up.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being so willing to share your expertise, over and over with our movement, and for being such an ally.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, and I'm glad we were able to connect with this newfangled technology. The old stuff by now, but it's still fairly new to me.
Yep, so we're going to do what we can to get this out to all of the hundreds of Occupy movements that are in smaller towns.
Well, great. I'm glad to hear that. And that's what they say this new technology is about. So
exactly.
Let's use it. Take care.
I hope you encourage your colleagues to also engage with us.
I will.
Thank you.
Take care now. Thank you.
Bye-bye.